That's right. Well, that's perhaps the first question we'll put to National Farmers Federation Vice President Charles Burke, who does join us now. Mr. Burke, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, tell us then exactly what is the benefit of this rail project as you see it for your constituents?
Well, first, just let me say I noted with interest a couple of the comments that you've both just made in the last couple of minutes, which would certainly mirror some of the thoughts that we have about it. If you look at the announcement in isolation of a north-south rail link, then look, we'd all have to support that.
Sure.
But there are a number of aspects to it which firstly we need more information about, and secondly we would contend the same type of concerns. It's a long way off. The first part of it is about assessing the viability, gathering investment, funding arrangements, and a whole host of things that will see this project not bringing any fruit, if you like, for quite some time.
So is that just a reservation then, based on the fact there's limited information, or do you have more grave concerns about the proposal?
Oh, we certainly don't have any grave concerns. We've been very much supportive of a north-south rail link and a corridor, but we're also very supportive and have made many requests for a national integrated transport freight task arrangement. We need to make sure that the rail and the road transport link with an effective port strategy as well. So we support a north-south rail link, but we want to make sure that it's done in an integrated way, and certainly if we are going to have one, then perhaps we need to be able to access it within a shorter time frame than what we're talking about.
Yeah, it does seem a very long time frame. What about the route itself? Are you guys sort of happy with the route, or is there another aspect of that you'd like to see re-looked at?
Well, I guess that would be something that we would like to have input into once they start doing the feasibility studies looking at routes. Obviously, I'm not an engineer or a surveyor, and a lot of us who operate in agriculture have some ideas, but at the end of the day it needs to be done in a way that is engineered in a sound way, but also to make sure that it's built in a cost-effective way. So there's a whole host of things that we would want to have our own, or agriculture would like to have its input into, and in particular not only the construction and the route, but also the access points, because I think we need to be aware that some of these high-speed rail networks don't necessarily allow for a lot of access points. So there's a lot of information that needs to be gathered before we get to that point.
Yeah, and certainly the route that say it does come about, which is I think still up in the air, but if it does come about, it really does change the nature. Like if this was to go up through where you're talking about, at the points where it actually does sort of pull in, it changes everything. Like it changes the road routes around there, whatever else. So it requires not just the railway line, but the road infrastructure in that area would need to be well and truly looked at as to how people then access that railway line.
And you're exactly right, and this is something that NFF has been calling for a good many years, both with this government and previous governments, that one-off infrastructure projects might be all well and good. We're not disputing the merit of an individual project. What we do want to see is a lot more planning and integrated planning for the spend for projects, so that we do link all those three modes of transport. It's a big country. We're spending an enormous amount of money on these infrastructure projects. Let's make sure that we all get best bang for the buck, and that it's through an integrated strategy.
Yeah, certainly in South Australia, I think we learned a real lesson back. Our Bulk Handling Authority, probably 15, 20 years ago, it used to be that all the major points were at seaports. All of a sudden they changed and had about 8 or 10 inland terminals. And that changed the route that grain was going enormously, and we paid a huge price road-wise for that, because a lot of the roads that were then used were not built with that freight task in mind. I think we learned a very, very valuable lesson, and there's no doubt that if this railway goes ahead, then it's going to change the freight task in New South Wales enormously.
Well, and the interesting point to follow on from that is we need to do almost a stock take of what the freight task will be, and that in some part may have bearing on the route for something like a north-south rail link. So I think we need to make sure that we look at things and we don't get it the wrong way around, so that we assess the freight task, we assess where the pressure points will be, and make sure that any infrastructure spend addresses those freight tasks and where the pressure points will be.
Yeah, well, you're certainly one step closer, because with both sides of politics having at some stage put this forward, you're a lot closer to achieving it. But let's hope that whoever's in charge consults widely and really brings the rural industries into the consultation, because and local government as well, because without that, we could make mistakes that we should have learnt a long time ago.
Is that technically consensus, Rob?
Well, technically consensus, yes.
Charles, just before we do let you go, and allowing yourself to be selfish for the moment, thinking of the NFF's wish list for this election, and indeed the incoming or incumbent and returned government, was this on your radar? Was this how much of a priority was establishing this link or upgrading to high-speed rail in this area? And I guess in going on from that, how satisfied have you been with what you've seen out of both the major parties in the lead up to this election?
Oh, gee, there's a number of questions in that. The first one, with regards to a north-south rail link, look, it's something that we discuss. It's something that we would like to see from the point of view of improving, freight possibilities. We're more interested in looking at a national strategy without it being specific for regions or mode of transport. So our first priority is an integrated transport infrastructure strategy. Within that, obviously, there are things like north-south, which make up the second part of the wish list. So, look, it's a priority, but it's not part of our overall, election strategy. As far as some of the other things are concerned, I think agriculture probably would share some frustration with many other industries in that things are a little bit slow coming. We're not seeing big announcements. We're just seeing some previously already announced initiatives by both sides virtually being rebadged with an election stamp on them. So we're hopeful that with a couple of weeks to go that we might see some more detail specifically on agriculture policies for research and development, biosecurity, and a number of other aspects of regional development. And this certainly fits within regional development. And we talk, there's been a lot of talk about population, sustainable population. We're all for that, because that means that we will have to come up with a plan which also includes regional development.
There's a lot of towns there could do with a couple hundred more people.
Yeah.
Well, that's right, but we don't want people just being shoehorned into towns for the heck of it. We need to make sure that the regions and industry prosper, and to do that we need integrated transport plans, we need good, sound economic development. So it fits into an overall policy that includes food security, investment and all those things, and we're a bit frustrated in that a couple of weeks in, we haven't seen much, so we're hoping that it's going to be a busy time for both sides, making all these wonderful announcements in the lead up to the election.
Well, they do leave their campaign launches awfully late sometimes, so there's still hope yet. Charles, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, pleasure.
Charles Burke, the Vice President of the National Farmers Federation.